Welcome to The Real, episode 96 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. This week, the Consumer Electronics Show is all about clean tech. Coal miners step up to support clean energy, and 40% of all the shipping on Earth is just to move fossil fuels around. And the alt-right tries to shut down the Clean Energy Show. All that and more on this ever-exciting edition of the Clean Energy Show.
James, I want to issue a formal apology for getting the episode number incorrect last week.
I trusted you, Brian. You're an academic. I know you've retired, but it doesn't mean you're stupid now. Come on.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Formal apology should be in writing, technically, and with the seal of the Queen, because we're Canadian.
Okay, I'll get on that.
Okay, so we are, in fact, 96 episode of the Clean Energy Show. We went through an extreme cold snap here, and I think it's worth talking about because, my son points out that Alaska, most of the population in Alaska doesn't get as cold as we do because they're on the ocean. It's cold, it's chilly, but they're moderated by the ocean. We here on the Canadian prairies sometimes are colder than the poles. You know,
I love to visit this website called Weather Extremes, which basically lists the coldest places on Earth at that moment. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but we, every year or two, we make the list of the top 10 or 20 coldest places on Earth. And we were definitely on that list over the last couple of weeks.
So when it comes to electric vehicles, and I'll remind new listeners that Brian and I are both electric vehicle owners. Brian has a newish Model 3 from Tesla, and I have a Nissan Leaf from 2013 with a much smaller battery and a much, it just turned 9. Happy birthday to my Leaf, by the way, just turned 9. I look forward to celebrating its 10th birthday. I bought it new tires for its birthday, but I bought them early. But that's really all I got it. But yes, we'll get into that in a minute. But you took a road trip, I'm reading, at minus 35?
This was basically New Year's Eve when it was, in fact, minus 35 Celsius. I didn't tell you last week because I had that exciting announcement to make. But first of all, we don't talk too much about where we are situated. Well, maybe we do. I don't know. It's not really important. Clean energy, global warming, this is a worldwide issue. So I don't like to kind of dwell on where we live. But I also realize, people are probably confused when we mention these place names of where we live. So I wanted to just give a quick geography lesson first to explain my road trip. But so we live in Canada. That's fairly clear. The second thing is we're in the province of Saskatchewan, which people think is hilarious, first of all.
Wait till we get to our city name.
And then we live in a city called Regina, which people also find hilarious. And the closest city to us is called Moose Jaw, which people find hilarious.
We've gotten used to it.
Yeah, you get used to it. But anyway, and then the place I wanted to go on New Year's Eve was Saskatoon, which is maybe less funny, but still kind of funny.
Kind of funny. Got some K's in there.
Anyway, it's important because normally we would drive straight to Saskatoon, stop in Davidson to charge. That's halfway. The whole thing takes about 3 hours. But New Year's Eve, I was driving to Saskatoon, and it was literally minus 35 Celsius during the day. Like it will get that cold at night, but sometimes, during the day is worse. But anyway, so I decided to take the route through Moose Jaw so I could charge at the Moose Jaw supercharger.
Really?
And then go to Davidson.
What made you decide to do that?
Because I wouldn't have made it otherwise.
Really?
It was just...
Are you kidding me?
It was so cold. Yeah. So...
wow. Let's review. You've got over 400 kilometers range technically on your Model 3.
Technically,
and
but it was minus 35.
How far is the trip? 200 and...
Yeah, 200 and some kilometers total.
It's like 2.5 hour trip. So you should be able to make that. If you didn't know better, if you were just looking at the car and you weren't educated on these things. Now, most people don't have to worry about this stuff because they're not stupid enough to live where we live. If you live in most of the United States or much of Europe, it gets cold, but it doesn't get this cold, usually.
No. And then of course, I had a headwind as well. So minus 35 and a headwind. So I can confirm that the range definitely dropped. So the normal highway consumption, like in the summer in the Tesla, is 160 watt hours per kilometer. And I was up to 315 on the drive to Moose Jaw. So basically, yeah, the consumption was double what it would normally be.
You actually took a longer route slightly, right?
So I took a longer route so that I would make it. I wouldn't have made it with that headwind and that cold. The Tesla superchargers are spaced really well apart, like about 150 kilometers. They've definitely thought about this, where it's sort of like worst case scenario. You can always make it between superchargers with a standard range car, which is the one I have, except when it's minus 35 and there's a headwind. So yeah, I took the longer route through Moose Jaw. It's the only way I would have made it. It was so ridiculously cold. And the car had some difficulty just sort of, keeping up, like keeping warm enough.
It did?
So, but it was kind of fun, just to kind of see the capabilities of the car. And then on the way home, I anticipated having a tailwind because that's usually how it works. Mm-hmm. But it turns out there was a headwind on the way home as well. And but I had already kind of decided to just take the shorter route and go through Davidson. Mm-hmm. So I went to Davidson. I charged to 100%, and then it's like another 155
okay, let me stop you
kilometers
there. Because
home.
Charging above 80% takes a long time because it slows right down in all electric vehicles. So how long did you spend charging to 100%?
I was there for about an hour. I watched a couple episodes of Archer on Netflix.
See, Brian, this is not a big trip, and yet you had to do this.
Yeah.
Are you still recommending a 400-kilometer car for people in this climate?
Well, yes, because it'll all work out in a couple of years. There'll just be more chargers.
But you're an early adopter. Nobody wants to stop and charge all the time.
Yeah. And
you shouldn't have to stop and charge, period, to go to Saskatoon.
No, but this is a once in every couple of years kind of situation where it's minus 35 with a headwind.
And by the way, with the wind, I can't imagine. What is it, like minus 50? It gets to the point where anybody in any car would question even taking that trip. Did you question taking the trip?
Yeah, but again, I wanted something to talk about on the podcast, and
you can't talk about it if you're dead.
We have cell phones, so yeah. It was I wanted to learn more about this stuff, and I'd done a previous cold weather trip, but like this was the extreme. Like this absolutely is the worst. So now I know what the consumption is like at the absolute worst. In the rest of my life, I probably won't have to drive with these terrible conditions.
I want to get into this later, but there's people who bought Teslas recently who have the heat pump. You don't have the heat pump.
No.
You just have the resistive heater. Now, for newbies, the heat pump is like a reverse air conditioner. So it creates heat through compression and decompression of a fluid in a closed loop system. This is more efficient. It uses less electricity than just like the toaster kind of heater that you would have in Brian's car and my car. But there has been some questions whether these suckers even work in our extreme climates. And these are new Teslas, and they did not work for a lot of people. Not everyone, but a lot of people on the local user groups. And this is just not a car not working. This is Christmas time and people driving cross country, 1,800 kilometers, the trip you made to Vancouver, for example, I saw one person doing, and you're in extreme cold temperatures and you have no heat in your car. It's not something to laugh at. It is a dangerous situation because you can't pull over to the side of the highway and be warm. You can't. You'd have to have a lot of candles in your car, and these people had to get towed. These heat pumps were not working, and I found that discouraging because there's been a news story written upon it in one of the newspapers in Calgary, and it was a fair story, but it's a big issue, and a lot of people were angry. Like people who were very pro-Tesla people were saying, Elon, come on, this is a serious issue. I'm rethinking my purchase. I'm going to try again in a few years. And these are not just your average. We want average people to just get in these things and enjoy them. You and I are early adopters. We're geeks. We're interested in how these things work, and we're adaptable. This concerns me. However, today, somebody posted on one of the forums that they had really good feedback from the Saskatoon Tesla person. They have a Tesla store there with a tech. This is the city that you travel to, by the way. Yeah, they said that they're sending parts to California and Alaska. And I thought, why send them to Alaska when we're colder here?
Yeah.
They might have a test facility inland in Alaska where it's colder than here, but I don't know. So they're working on it hard, and they're sending out a software update that might temporarily help the situation, but it sounds like it's a flap that lets in cold air that should close or something like that. And they said the heat pump system actually has the ability to work really well, even in colder temperatures below -30, because there are 2 loops that use compression and expansion of the refrigerant going from liquid to gas to liquid. And those loops can produce heat even in the extreme cold. The Alaska team has been testing this in super cold, and it does work well. So fundamentally, the heat pump can work in our climates. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical, though. I see my heat, the Leaf has, when it has a heat pump, it has a backup resistive heater. Now, the heat pump's not going to be as good as Tesla's. Tesla's is groundbreaking. But there's a limit to how much heat, because it has to pull energy out of the air and put it into your car at -35. I would think would either be a slow process or not an adequate process. What do you think?
Well, it remains to be seen. I mean, hopefully this can mostly be fixed with a software update, but I guess we don't really know yet.
Sounds like there's some hardware involved, though. It's both involved. And they can fix it, but it's just a bad situation to be in. You got a brand new, expensive vehicle. You're traveling across country, and it's -35 in your car, and you've got kids in the back. It's nothing to laugh at.
No, but it sounds like it's not all the cars either. Some of them have been fine.
Not all the cars, but sometimes it's intermittent, too. Now, they will fix this, and it will be a done deal. But I'm skeptical. Like, I would really have to. I'm very surprised that a heat pump alone, like they take some heat off the motor and off the computer as well, or maybe that's where they suck the heat out of. I don't know. But in these temperatures, I'm putting out, well, in Teslas and the resistive heaters, you're putting out 6,000 or 7,000 watts of heating. And in my Leaf, I hooked up the app to it, and it was putting out 4,000 to 5,000 watts, depending on the situation. That's a lot of electricity. That's more than your outlets in your house. I mean, each outlet in your house each circuit can only handle about 1,000 or 1,500 watts. So that is a lot of electricity just going in to heat the cabin, because you don't have waste heat. So for me, I've learned some things, Brian, this week, because I've monitored my car out in the cold, and I have a 3.6 kilowatt charger. That is all that my Leaf came with, and that's all that my EV electrical supply equipment supplies to it as a charger from my house, from a 240 volt thing in the house. But at that, my heater uses more than that. So if I'm preheating my car off the grid in the morning, it will do it for up to 2 hours, and if it's -35 like that. And it will be toasty, and, the surfaces will be all completely thawed out and nice, and the snow melted. It's great, but it's using a lot of electricity for a long time. And in doing so, it's actually decharging the battery, because it's using more than the house can supply. Now, most cars now, I think almost all cars will give you 6 kilowatt charging, so that's the ideal situation, especially in Canada. Don't try not having a built-in charger at your home for if you live in Canada, because you want to heat off the grid and you want lots of electricity to heat it back up again. But yeah, and it's interesting. I did a check. I have a smart plug device, so we had to plug in my son's car so we could start it, because it's been sitting around. His school is delayed, and his block heater on his old Honda Civic uses 400 watts, but my wife's work car, the Prius, uses 200 watts. So 2 different block heaters for a similar sized engine. However, my wife's car makes an ugly noise when you start it in minus. There's no, it's just the traction battery actually turns over the engine, and it's going to turn it over no matter what. It just doesn't sound good doing it.
Yeah, and again, to explain to people who don't live in the frozen north, but our cars all have block heaters. Our gasoline cars all have a little block heater that just warms the engine block, so the thing will actually start when it's this cold.
And yeah, the oil has to be, watery, otherwise it's thick and you can't move it. You need to move the pistons through a non-molasses like oil. So that's why you heat it. And it takes 4 hours. You can put it on a timer. However, Brian, I noticed, though, that my car would have to use 400 watts in this temperature. You couldn't put it on a timer because you got to keep the battery at a decent temperature. So in that sense, electric car is using more. Not that anybody uses timers around here. The power company gave away timers, but I don't see very many people using timers. They just plug their car in when it's this cold and leave it plugged in. Electricity is cheap.
Anyway, I got to finish my story. Driving back from Davidson, I decided to take the shorter route on the way home. So I charged to 100% in Davidson, and I made it to my driveway with the battery at exactly 0.
Oh, Jesus. Did you? Wow.
Yeah. The conditions were slightly better, so I thought I could make it and wouldn't have to go through Moose Jaw. So I decided to
slow?
risk it. And then toward the end, I slowed down to like 80 kilometers to make sure that the problem is that little snowflake icon pops up. So I was going to be fine. Like I was going to have 9%, 8% of the battery left by the time I get home. But once the battery gets kind of drained, suddenly the little snowflake appears and you lose 5% of your battery because of the cold. Like you don't have access to all the power. So even though I got home at 0%, I plugged it in, and within a minute or two, it was back up to 8 or 9%. Like there was still 8 or 9% energy in the battery. I just didn't have access to all of it because it was so cold.
Okay. So how was your anxiety at that point? Were you sweating bullets there?
Yeah, well, my partner was actually following behind me in a gas car. We ended up taking 2 cars up there, long story, one being a gas car. So she just followed behind me, so I was never too worried.
Wow, that's still a scary EV story. Now, listen, people, I am not dissing. Brian and I are not dissing EVs. In fact, I would much rather have an EV than a gas car in this ridiculous climate we live in when it's minus 35. I just suggest bigger batteries for people, and I still say that if you have a 500 kilometer battery instead of Brian's 400 and some, that it'll make a difference, don't you think? I mean, admit it to us.
Oh, yeah. It'll make a difference, but eventually there'll be chargers every 50 kilometers, so, eventually it won't be a problem.
Yeah, and then you could just do more frequent charging when the weather is freakishly cold.
Yeah, and
it's dangerous.
It's
dangerous to take a highway trip.
A road trip to Edmonton at the end of January for an event. The event has been canceled, so I don't have to go. But I was thinking of just taking the gas car because, the charging just takes too long at those cold temperatures.
And by the way, it's near freezing today where we live, so
it's shot back up finally.
It's shot back up, and all the roads are going to crack in half, going from minus 40 to 0. Yeah, so I heard from people on the local forums that the Hyundai Ioniq 5, I asked them how it heated up because they were driving it in these temperatures. They said it heated up fine. It was heated up quickly and comfortable, so that's good to know. Because it does use a heat pump as well. I don't know. I assume it has a resistive heater as a backup. And there was this Washington Post story. I don't know if you saw it, but it was sort of, there was this traffic jam in Washington where everybody was stuck in a snowstorm.
Yeah.
And then the writer postulated what it would be like if they were all EVs and said it would be bad.
But the opposite is true.
The actual opposite is true. Because all of your heating can go to the car. I wouldn't want to do it at minus 35 because it's not going to last as long. But I do know that the heating in my car, if it takes, once you get the cabin up to heat, it would take about 2,000 watts in extreme cold. So you can do the calculations, but it's a matter of hours. It's a few hours. It's probably, in most modern cars, it's probably a full day. So,
and if you've got an old crappy car and you're leaving the engine running to keep yourself warm, you could asphyxiate yourself.
Yes, not good. Yeah, I just we're going to get to some more of this in a minute, but you can. There's so much prejudice against that. So we're going to get on with the show here. I want to talk about something. As our regular listeners know, we have a TikTok channel. Why? I guess to promote the show.
It's James's hobby.
I like to air out my dance moves from time to time. but I tried it for the hell of it, and we got a lot of views. So there's, the algorithm is so good that people interested in what we're interested in, they find us. So, but sometimes when I post a video, bad people find us. People get angry.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they find us, but the more discussion that goes on, the more views we get. So I posted a video the other day when it was minus 37 in the morning. I was driving my daughter to school because she missed the school bus. And I instead of making a professional video, I just did it for my camera, turned it on, walked out the door and said, this is how minus 37, it's horrible to live here, blah, blah, blah. This is how you start a car. I've done a similar video before. And the hate. I just left it there. My son comes rushing in the door. He says, Dad, you got to look at your video. You got to respond to these people. And I said, no, I don't like reading the comments. What are they saying? And he said, no, you got to respond to the top rated comment. And, yeah. And anyway, I'll get to some of those comments in a moment, but the video got shut down. It says the actions in this video could result in serious injury or death. This is me starting my electric car at minus 37.
Yeah, so
Thoughts?
people can tag the video if they think it's
Yes.
dangerous, and if they're jerks, they can do it just to be jerks.
They do it. They get together and they do it in a group. And my son says the alt-right has found you, and they like to shut these things down. It's so stupid that I want to get into why people would be so threatened by a video of me starting my bloody car.
Yeah.
I want to get into it a bit. So I'll give you a comment here. One comment says, you say you hate oil, but half your car is made of oil. Two things there. I didn't say anything about oil.
Yeah.
I didn't say I hated oil. I didn't say anything about oil. All I did was start my bloody electric car. And no, you hate oil. You said it. You said it. You said it by owning an electric car.
I mean, personally, I love oil. I love it. I like to bathe in it.
Can't get enough of it. I cook with it, Brian, for God's sake. I don't know what to make of these people, but half your car is made. This is the last gasp of the oil fans where we live, because we're in an oil province. Second only to Alberta, as I always say. And actually, the hilarious thing is the car is not made out of oil. It's made out of recycled plastics.
Yeah, which may have originally derived from oil.
Yes, but
also
oil was not coming out of my neighbor's oil well and put into my car. It was recycled.
And if it is made of oil, at least you're not burning it.
Yes, and that's what I said. I said I'm okay with making things with oil. We desperately need to stop burning it right now as fast as we possibly can. This pisses people off even more, and that's when they shut the video down when I said that. So, if I've said this before, and I need to repeat it. I need to repeat this, Brian, especially when we're talking about minus 37 temperatures. If there was no climate crisis, if there was no pollution problem in the world, I would still gravitate to an electric car the exact same amount I am now.
Yeah, they're
because
just nicer and
it is a
better.
better vehicle.
Yeah.
They are better vehicles. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong.
I'm not wrong. Man is a university professor. I have to milk this while you're still a university professor before you retire, because then it's too late. When you're just somebody on the street, you're just nobody. You're just a guy at Tim Hortons drinking a coffee or something. I mean, geez. So the other guy says, I want to see your power bill. So I showed him my power bill. I went to great lengths to show him my power bill. And because I don't log into my power bill account, my wife's laptop has the code in it. So I went and found it, and it was pre-logged in. So I printed off a screenshot of it. And it was really low because it was in December, and we had a really good solar November here.
Yeah.
Freakishly good solar November. So it actually was lower, I'm sure, than anyone in Saskatchewan with a house who doesn't have solar.
Yep.
And I have an electric car who's supposedly, I hate this question, Brian. Yeah, but how much does your power bill go up? I hate that. I hate it so much because it's so stupid. My power bill, the Canadian Automobile Association, as I pointed out, says that the average EV user in Canada spends about $29 per month on EV charging. Now, yes, the first EVs were small batteries. They were like the Nissan Leafs. So you're not using those for road trips so much, and the power bill is going to be that. Most electricity in Canada is cheap because we have lots of hydro kicking around. I mean, my gas bill went down from at least $150 a month to $30 a month, right? Because I was paying for a gas SUV with premium gas. It might have even been $200. I can't remember. All I know is that my car, my used Leaf, paid for itself in 3.5 years, which is gone. I'm in year 4 going on 5. So it's free. It's a free car, no maintenance, zero maintenance. And it's a joy to drive in minus 37 or plus 37. It's just a great thing. I mean, as far as what that is, it's a great car, and I would love to have other cars. By the way, I'm not going to test drive the Hyundai Ioniq 5. You were asking me about that last week. I don't want to have my heart broken. I don't want to say, I love this, I can't have it. It's like going on a blind date with Scarlett Johansson and realizing she's married. I mean, you don't want to go get into that and not be able to take it any further. You don't want.
Well, plus car dealerships are annoying.
They're horribly annoying, and they'll keep calling me forever and trying to sell me gas cars probably. Is this these right-wing nuts that my son calls them, and he said he thinks it's impressive that they actually got together and did this, though, that he thinks we're a powerful channel. Our little Clean Energy Show podcast YouTube or TikTok channel. So I've been really fascinated since the whole 2016 election in the States about why people are so angry and why are they so insecure that I would get into it. Why would this be controversial? Why wouldn't they say, cool, this guy has an electric car, likes it, good enough, have a good life?
No, and people around here have gotten upset about, fake meat burgers. Well, don't eat one then if it upsets you.
By the way, at lunchtime today, I didn't have one, but I was reading coupons to pass the time. As one does at my age. And the KFC, I thought it was interesting that you could get a Big Crunch sandwich or a fake meat sandwich for the same coupon. Like it was the same thing. You could switch them. They're equal in value now. And as we've said on the show, fake meats are going to become cheaper and disrupt the meat industry. And I think actually that the fake meat sandwich by itself is cheaper now than the regular chicken sandwich. So there's this place that my boy, who's in university, grew up on YouTube. He has a YouTuber that he liked. He showed me these videos, and I watched a 7-part hour-long series from Innuendo Studios, and I thought it was great and very interesting. But who is this guy? Does he know what he's talking about? Well, it turns out that CTV picked it up and actually talked about his series. So that gave it some credence, and I feel like I have license to talk about it now. It is well researched, and it is, there's footnotes and things like that, but it is just one person's opinion. And I try to avoid, going down paths just because, I want to be open-minded about it, Brian, but I'm fascinated why people are threatened by me and why my brother-in-law blames Trudeau because he works in the oil industry. And he did a series. He's also done one on the alt-right, but he did a series on Gamergate, which was an attack on feminists critiquing video games about 6 years ago, which I was following at the time. I was quite interested in that too, and quite disgusted by that, and quite curious as to why they would be doing that, and why it was such a big deal, and why they were threatened. So anyway, I feel like people are threatened, and this is going to be a bit messy here, but bear with me. Part of it is like the status quo, that they don't want someone to tell them that there's something wrong with them, because their world starts to fall apart. Basically, their worldview has to be right, and if you accidentally challenge that, unaggressively like I did, then
We have to do a psych profile on Angry Jack. We have to understand Jack's relationship to himself. It is most useful not to think of Jack as a person. He's a condition similar to being drunk. He's the belligerent and dangerous asshole that some of us become when we feel our conception of ourselves as moral human beings is threatened. It's like having a patch of discolored skin on your arm that could mean you need to switch your laundry detergent, or it could mean you have skin cancer, and not desperately wanting to go to the doctor to find out. It's a perfectly human thing to do. We get to operate in this world as if we're healthy until someone tells us we're not.
And that's what our politicians are doing. They're plugging their ears and going, nah, I can't hear you. Everything's fine. The way I woke up and think of the world is the right way. But the world, as we cover every week on the show, is changing fast. And, so if the world goes green, how will this person fit into the world?
He reads any critique of his own gender politics as an appeal to shun, shame, or incarcerate him. He's a guy who's terrified of who he is if the world Sarkeesian describes is real, of how he'd be treated there, of what it would ask of him, of what his conscience would tell him to do.
So every time I offered an explanation on the website, they would ask me something else, and they would accuse me of lying. Me, James Whittingham, the most honest person in the world. I could sell used cars, Brian. I am Mr. Honesty, and they've come after me.
Someone challenges an assumption, and the question is, what do I need to believe to write this off? So they pick an argument, and when that gets challenged, they pick another, and again, and again, and again, and every time someone offers them a chance to pop that bubble, they double down.
And that's my experience. That's what I'm seeing, and it's sad, but I'm endlessly fascinated as to how these people are reacting. Do you have any thoughts at all?
Yeah, well, and that's why I don't like arguing with people on the internet.
No.
It's absolutely pointless. It doesn't get you anywhere. But I think the other thing that's sort of different about this and why this is so amplified, I mean, social media, but it's the speed of change, It's just getting faster. I saw a stat on somewhere online the other day about, how many years was the telephone around before, most people had one? How many years were televisions around before most people had one? And it's like 20 years, 30 years. But then for smartphones, it was like 6 years, 4 years, everything is just sped up a lot. Okay, so there was a really interesting blog post on Substack from Bill McKibben, the noted environmentalist. And I just thought this was fascinating. Somebody shared this on Twitter. He did some quick math and figured out that about 40% of all shipping in the world would go away if we just switched to clean energy. 40% of all the shipping on Earth is basically just to move fossil fuels around to somewhere where we can burn them. So as soon as all this cleans up, as soon as we have these clean grids with solar and wind and batteries and everything, 40% of all the shipping on Earth will just go away. We won't need to do it anymore. It's this sort of self-fulfilling pollution problem where we've got to use fossil fuels to collect them and move them and then burn them. And then we need more fossil fuels to move them some more. And I just thought that was a fascinating statistic. And it's definitely going to go away. That's 40% of the world's shipping we're not even going to need to do.
I have two thoughts immediately on this. One is I'm really shocked that it's 40%, that much fossil fuels has to be shipped around the world. We're talking coal here too, remember?
Yeah. And that's going away quickly.
That's going away very quickly. And the second thought is that shipping is very filthy. They burn the dregs of the oil refinery, and they don't do it in port necessarily, depending on the port, because they're not allowed to. But you can burn whatever horrible things you want to get that ship across the ocean. And that's 40% of that right there, just by cleaning up, the rest. Wow. That's just amazing to me.
And that's all the ships, but, just think of all the semi-trucks. You'll constantly see semi-trucks filled with gasoline going down the highway. Yep. And it's the same thing. They've got to deliver it to a gas station, and then, we just burn
it frustrates me on the internet. These people who are attacking us will look at memes and things on the internet that compare electric, pollution of electric cars to gas cars and stuff like that. and they're not doing well to wheel. They're just doing, the gas magically appears in the gas tank and burns.
Yeah.
And the electricity, though, has to go through everything. It's made by coal and all this.
No, and cars, because there's been all these pollution regulations on them, they, as we've discussed before, burn pretty cleanly as far as fossil fuel burning goes compared to like leaf blowers and lawnmowers that don't have the same regulations. But, just think of this, 40% of all the worldwide shipping is part of that emission in your car. So it's deceptive to think that it burns clean.
Yes. And the refining of oil is energy intensive. In fact, just the refining is worse than just the using an electric car. When it was minus 37, 38, 39 below zero in Celsius and Fahrenheit, I live a couple kilometers or so, 2 to 3 kilometers away from the refinery. That's right adjacent to the city. And oh, Nelly, can you see a cloud? I mean, that cloud from that refinery in that temperature, it doesn't go straight up. It covered cities, small cities, like miles and miles away. Like it went on forever. And if it was a little lower to the ground, you'd crashes because you would be crashing into things. But it's amazing to get a long view of what that smokestack looks like and how big it is. Just so much energy and steam and heating of that product to make the oils. And yes, I smell it sometimes. So Brian, CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, is happening in Las Vegas, a bit of a scaled down version. They didn't have it last year, right?
I think so, yeah.
But they had it this year, and a lot of it is in our purview here.
Yeah, well, consumer electronics, it's a pretty broad thing. It can include cars now. So yeah, like, Chevrolet, GM chose to make a big splash, make a big announcement about all of their electric vehicles. So yeah, tons of green tech, clean tech announcements at the Consumer Electronics Show.
So Chevrolet is the last major truck company in North America to announce or at least show off their electric pickup truck version that they'll have coming. And that is the Chevy Silverado. I don't like it. It's my least favorite of all the pickup trucks, I think. It's not terrible. I'm not inspired by it in any way. And it's very expensive for some reason. It's got 400 miles or 640 kilometers of range. They claim, though, this is the interesting thing here, Brian, if true, they claim a 350 kilowatt charging rate, which is the maximum of the chargers that are sort of future-proof that are out now, right? Most cars can't do anywhere near that, but they claim it goes up to 350 as peak charging rate, and that is 100 miles or 160 kilometers in 10 minutes of charging, even though it's a big, heavy vehicle. If you charge that in your Tesla, you would get double that because you're going to be more efficient and lighter weight stuff and all that.
Trucks are not real efficient.
You don't know about the charging curve. Electric says the DC fast charging situation is great, but remember that at double the battery size of a traditional vehicle, even charging this thing fast will take some time and a lot of energy compared to an electric car. GM says 100 miles of range can be added in 10 minutes, so a 20 to 30 minute fast charge will likely be enough to get someone on their way on a typical summer road trip. It's got a 10,000 pound towing capacity, lots and lots of torque, and apparently they're going to come out with a towing version, which is interesting, that will do 20,000, which will be the new winner for electric vehicle towing if that comes out, but that has not been varied. So it's got two-way power. It can charge another car, can stop and give your Tesla a boost if you're caught in minus 37 on a highway. The frunk is like the F-150 Lightning. It has a low opening like that. So fall 2023, I guess a work truck variant is coming up. And they're going to have the work truck variant will be completely different. It's going to actually have less horsepower and torque and something like 8,000 pounds towing capacity. But the tow package will be 20,000 pounds when it does come, the towing variant. I wouldn't call it a package. So $105,000 US starting. That's pricey, isn't it?
That's pricey. And then the other thing about all these car announcements is they are mostly fairly far in the future, unfortunately. So a lot is going to have to shake out. But at least it's more honest, I think, to give it that high price rather than, there's often like a $40,000 like Ford, base model. But realistically, they're not going to make that many. It's going to be hard to get, et cetera, et cetera.
So the work truck price hasn't been announced, but apparently somehow they're all spoken for. Like there was no pre-orders, no anything. They're all spoken for. And, Ford hasn't announced how many work trucks they're selling either. That's not even included in their figures. I'm telling you, Brian, people, and there was a survey recently that we'll talk about later, but people are really interested in these trucks. If you're in the city and you have a business, going EV is a no-brainer, and it makes you look good at this point, makes you stand out. So the reservation is now open, but don't expect to see any sitting around a car lot until 2025, according to Electric's opinion. Also, this is kind of interesting. The Equinox, which is a small SUV from Chevrolet, will be starting at $30,000 USD, which is a pretty good price. The specs are over 200 miles of range, which is kind of low. 150 kilowatt charging, decent. That's 3 times what the Chevy Bolt is, and certainly usable. They might have a very successful EV on their hands if they can price it and make some of these, The EV tax credit ends up passing in the States. It would make the vehicle cheaper than its gasoline-powered version before gas savings, and that's just game over when that happens because the operational costs are going to be cheaper, and you're just such an economic disruption there. Yay, capitalism. It looks like the Equinox EV and Blazer EV being powered by the Altium platform, and they're going to start moving away from the Bolt EV. I think they're moving away from the Bolts, just like Nissan is rumored to be moving away from the Leaf, perhaps. So Sony released a car. Any thoughts?
Well, it's too far in the future, I think, to really say much about it. It's really just a concept, and concepts are a lot of fun. And it
better have good sound. That's all I have to say. It better have good sound.
Yeah. So we'll see. No one knows if Sony's actually even going to make a car, but interesting if they did.
There's a very interesting product that was shown there. That has to do with solar roof tiles.
Yeah, so Tesla are the ones known currently for solar roof tiles, which are like shingles, but they produce solar power, electricity. And it's a company called GAF Energy, and they've announced something that appears to be kind of simpler and cheaper than the Tesla solar roof tiles. They showed some pictures, and it doesn't look as nice as the Tesla roof because you can actually tell where the solar panels are. There's sort of shingle area and then solar panel area. But if they're cheaper and they work, that sounds great. It sounds like they're easier to install, like you just install them with nails like you would normal shingles. But again, it's just that sort of pre-announcement kind of thing where they're not actually available yet. But, I would expect lots more products like this.
Interesting where that goes and if they work, because Tesla sure has taken a long time to perfect theirs. The Coal Miners Union is supporting Build Back Better, I read. That's pretty amazing.
This story is a bit old. This is sort of from before Christmas, but we didn't have a chance to talk about it. But, of course, the Build Back Better bill in the U.S., supported by the Biden administration, has lots of clean energy stuff in it, which, should help the environment. But the Senator Joe Manchin has been holding all this up, partly because he is part owner of a coal mine, and he wants to keep mining coal and making money off of coal. And his one vote is the vote that is able to tip this either way. But the Coal Miners Union has come out in favor of Build Back Better because it turns out they can see the writing on the wall. They're not, they know that coal mining is going to go away, but they think that they have a better chance if Build Back Better is supported, that they'll be able to transition better rather than, just putting your head in the sand and pretending that coal is going to go on forever, supporting the bill.
Let's get to the clean energy mailbag, Brian. We have a letter from Abe. I'm not sure where Abe's from. It says, it's come to my attention that not only EV cars, but EV bikes are suffering from chip shortages as well. Major suppliers such as Shimano, Bosch. Shimano makes bicycle parts like derailleurs and so forth. And Bosch, which makes electric motors, are behind on delivery for motors and battery units for the same reasons affecting other suppliers. I hope to be the owner of an EV car someday, but I'm afraid that date is still pretty far out. Could you spend a little bit more time on other forms of EV transport? Love the show, thanks. And Brian, I can't see any shortages in where I keep an eye on bikes, but I've been looking at department stores. I looked at Costco in the States and in Canada and Walmart. I've always been keeping an eye on that Walmart bike that sells for $7.98 in Canada and even less in the States. They have only at the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody like me was buying an electric bike. Brian and I, by the way, both own electric bikes. That they were short, that they were out of stock for any length of time. And Costco has had some units out. And I think the moral of the story here is that there's less selection, but still a pretty good selection, right? You still have a lot of selection, just less than you would have otherwise. It's not a desperate situation.
Yeah, but, obviously the supply chain is affecting things. And yeah, I have two updates. First of all, I did finally repair my electric bike.
I was
battery
drinking. I was taking a drink.
Iron.
I almost did a spit tank. My God, really?
You almost did a spit take. I finally got around to it, right in the depths of winter. So I can't really test it out to make sure that it continues to work. It was a loose connection, and I repaired it once, and it still remained loose, so the power was intermittent. Anyway, I think I fixed it so I can give you back your soldering iron and your multimeter and all that stuff. So I'm going to do that soon.
Day.
Yeah. Second thing was I'm still trying to get an electrician to do an upgrade to the service to my house from 100 amp service to 200 amp service. And I'm just having difficulty even getting somebody to call me back. But, I have one person working on it. But one of them finally did call me back and said that there was a back order on all of the 200 amp panels and breakers.
Wow.
That breakers are in short supply. And again, it's this whole supply chain issue. So we'll see. I'm going to keep calling electricians and hopefully they can actually get a panel and breakers. But this one electrician told me that, yeah, there's thousands of back orders for, this one particular brand of breaker.
Let me ask you though, what's your rush?
Well, there's no rush, but there's, it's sort of like before I do other upgrades in my house, that's kind of the thing I have to do first.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. We will talk about e-bikes, e-motorcycles. I see the electric vehicle retailer in where we live in a small city here. They've got lots of motorcycles, e-bikes coming in, different dirt bikes and road bikes, and that's cool, And we're going to cover that because last mile. We're a bit biased, though, because as we said, the whole minus 37 thing, Brian's not going to be riding around on his bike because he will die.
No, people do cycle here in the winter, but they're all insane. But there's about 5 months of the year where we really can't cycle here, so we're pretty.
Well, some of those people
cars.
listen to our show. They're not insane. They're just dedicated.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. A little more dedicated than we are. We'll put it that way.
Did I speak to? That's what they are. They're not insane.
Get those two words
dedicated.
confused.
That's
It's the retirement. It's a good thing you're retiring. I would. Yeah. Here's another letter for us. It says, "I would really like a car." This is from Montreal, and Mitchell in Montreal. It says, I would really like a car with significant trunk space. His family life has changed. He's got a couple of kids. He wants to cart around. He says, I almost decided on the EV Soul, and he hasn't owned a car in a while. He says, it seemed a bit bigger for cargo space, and I don't think it is, but still quite small. That's deceptive, actually. Actually, the Kia Soul has no cargo space as far as I'm concerned. Then I spotted what I think was a VW ID.4, and I got all excited and looked it up and realized it was a perfect car. And not only is it a million times nicer than the Kia Soul for almost the same price, it's so much bigger and cooler. I was ecstatic, and then I called a dealer and was told that it would be at least a year to get one. Then the next dealer said, get in line, and it's more like a year and a half. So I got on a list anyway, and then the dealer called me back and told me it'd probably be 2 years because of so much demand and low supply. They are only making the...
Yeah, but is he maybe just trying to sell him a gas car?
Yeah, they don't call you back for being nice about delays. So they are only making the top of the line, most expensive models for now, of course. And if I wanted the more affordable base model, I'm looking at 2 years, if he's lucky. Sigh. So what a downer. So now I switched to the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is also getting great reviews, not the least of which is from here, the Clean Energy Show. One up from the base is $2,000 more that includes the heat pump and faster charging. So this is one that I should have in no time. July will be here before you know it. I'm a bit confused by all this. I went and looked at some of the prices on these cars. They're supposed to start at $44,900 in Canada, in Canadian dollars, so that they get...
And they have to qualify for our federal EV subsidy.
But they're not. The Wikipedia page lists them at that, and Google lists them at that, and you go to the website, and they're more than that.
Well, I think they're fudging it because that does include freight and delivery, which is like $1,200, $1,500.
Some Ford dealers are charging $50,000 extra for the F-150 reservation. Car dealers are evil, Brian. They're evil.
Oh, they're the worst.
But anyway, I really like the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I think if it is the price as the ID.4, it's a better value because they have super fast charging. It has 800-volt architecture, doesn't it? So it's got really fast charging is so important because it's almost as important as battery size because you can make do with a smaller battery if you charge fast. So I listened to you guys doing all sorts of activities because we asked this what people do. He says he's cycling, he's cooking, he's cleaning, he's walking, gardening, and mowing the lawn with my human-powered push mower. Brian used to do push, and then you went to battery electric, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Or shoveling snow, depending on the season. And he asked why we don't have any sponsors. A lot of people are asking that these days. Why do we have no sponsors?
Because we're so successful, we should have sponsors.
One day we'll have sponsors, and you won't like the fact that we have sponsors. But we're growing on a regular basis, but it's going to take some time before it becomes worthwhile to have sponsors on our part, for the extra work that would entail. Because we're both, it takes a lot of time to put the show together. So for now, the ID.4 will be available in British Columbia, Quebec, and he's in Quebec, so that's great. If I was in Quebec, I'd be buying EVs left and right. They get $13,000 off with provincial and federal rebates there. Ooh, why doesn't everyone drive an EV?
It's bizarre. I don't know why.
Why would you buy a gas car? Why? Because you don't know there's things you don't know, and you should be listening to this show. So I love the heated window on the ID.4. Love it. But they said the Volkswagen Canada website said production begins at the Chattanooga, Tennessee plant in 2022, and then it'll go to the rest of the province nationwide. And so the ID.4 has, the Ioniq has more interior space than the ID.4. I don't know about cargo space, but interior volume as a whole is bigger. So that's pretty cool. And, for what you get, they're not that bad. And the base model does say 800-volt architecture with faster charging and pretty fast vehicle, heat pump and battery system included. And I love the heated window in the ID.4, though. But we like to hear from you. CleanEnergyShow@gmail is our email. We're on Twitter and TikTok. Go fight the haters. Clean Energy Pod is our handle. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for special features. And you can leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. There's just not enough time, Brian. I can't make it through the show. There's just too much to talk about this week. Rivian has now produced over 1,000 electric vehicles at their factory. Good news. They've also filed a new trademark signaling a move that will make electric bikes. What do you think of this, Brian? Why are they making electric bikes?
Interesting, yeah, and I wanted to mention Harley Davidson too, who is getting big into electric bikes as well. So it's electric bikes are huge, and I think they're going to be used by a lot of people, even in North America. The EV supply chain emissions are less than fossil fuel powered vehicles, which is what we're talking about. A Yale study has found that the total indirect emissions from electric vehicle supply chains pale in comparison to the same indirect emissions from fossil fuel powered vehicles, although you will see studies saying the opposite because the fossil fuels industry is funding those studies.
Florida is gutting their net metering solar program like California, or at least it looks like it. The utility is put forward legislation from like they're telling what the government what to do to kill the program and the jobs that come with that. And it turns out, Brian, that Florida is a shithole state. Who knew?
Yeah, and no update yet on California, but if you live in California or Florida, I would imagine you could try and get involved and try and fight those initiatives.
All-time heat records were set last year at 8.3% of all weather stations across the United States, more than any other year since records began. The seven hottest years on record, Brian, have been the past 7. Let's take a moment of silence for the planet. You have anything to say to that?
That's unfortunate.
Tesla unveils new CCS2 charge port in the refreshed Model S and X for the European market. Why, Brian? What's going on?
I don't know. I think it's more of a styling cosmetic thing, but I'm not sure.
BMW aims to sell 200,000 EVs globally this year. That is double what they delivered last year. And Marty, my friend, is on the list to get one of those, I believe. Tesla's Giga Austin may be making production of the Y in a week or so. Have you heard anything about that?
No, it's mostly just still rumors at this point, but yeah, it should be starting soon, and they're doing test production at the factory in Berlin, so yeah, should be starting soon.
You know, soon the Clean Energy Show will be so big that people from the Tesla plant will be sending us emails.
Yeah, please do. If there's updates from Giga Texas or Giga Berlin.
But then you'll go buy more stock.
Message.
You'll run out and buy more stock and get even richer.
Yeah.
I see your back's not better, by the way. You're still tilting your position there.
No, I just, I'm just getting comfortable.
Milan has approved a €200 million plan to create a 750-kilometer bike network of paths linking 80% of the city to bike paths and connect the city to surrounding areas. And I'm looking at a picture of this, and it looks like a spider web. It has concentric circles and webs sort of holding it out. It looks amazing. It looks like...
No, that looks incredible. It's going to be the envy of the world if they can make that happen.
750 kilometers, and the goal is to achieve a 20% modal shift to biking by 2035. And that thing is going to be full of e-bikes and e-scooters.
If you build it, they will come.
I believe they will. From Green Car Reports, Toyota plans a solid-state battery debut in a hybrid by 2025. They won't say what hybrid, and possibly a Prius, people are speculating. That's pretty fast because most people are saying at least 2030 for a marketable solid-state battery. So I'll just leave that in the speculation department. From The Independent in the UK, government invites oil companies to help write the rule book on new fossil fuel drilling. That's always great when you invite the evil people to make the rules, as they are in Florida with solar. Just months after Boris Johnson urged countries to stop extracting fossil fuels at COP26, this is how he responds. So, Brussels Airlines is operating 3,000 empty flights just to keep their airport privileges. I don't know to cry or laugh. Help me.
Turns out airports have rules that, if you don't have a certain number of flights, you kind of lose your spot. Like, these airport spots and terminals and runways have to be kind of rented. And yeah, they ran 3,000 empty flights over this past winter just to keep their spots. And we have to stop doing this.
If it wasn't a climate abomination, I would say to Brussels Airlines, have the Clean Energy Show do a show from 30,000 feet. But we don't want to pollute the skies. Or, just getting me off the ground is going to cause more pollution. The Chevy Bolt is expected to resume production on January 24th. And is on pace to sell 40,000 units. It was on pace to sell 40,000 units in 2021 until the battery recall and production stoppage due to fires. So that's a cheap, appealing EV. Does not charge fast. Does not isn't big. It's not a very big vehicle, but it's appealing, and it's, I don't know. I would consider it, I guess. From EV adoption, the most annual sales of non-Tesla EVs in the U.S. was in 2014 when the Nissan Leaf sold 30,200 units.
Wow.
But that's going to change in 2022, they say. The question is, who will do it? Average used car price. This is shocking, Brian. The average used car price in the United States is now above $29,000, and that is up almost 30% in a year. year over year, used car prices.
That's crazy. I mean, I guess there's fewer new cars on the lot. I guess this has something to do with it.
This is a terrible time for me to have to buy a car, Brian.
Yeah.
The absolute worst time. CNBC says that in the United States, new cars are now selling above the manufacturer's suggested retail price on average, and that is at $45,872. The average time on a car lot to sell is only 17 days, a record low, and it was 49 days a year ago. So it's just crazy. It's crazy.
Shortage of supply.
And finally, this week from Nate Bullard at Bloomberg New Energy Finance, New Boston Consulting Group surveyed 250 institutional investors and found that more expect peak oil to happen this decade than did last year. In fact, it more than doubled. The absolutely agree doubles from 9 to 19%. So even those pesky institutional investors are conceding that oil is done. Adios, oil. That's our time for this week. Consider reviewing and rating our show on iTunes and Spotify, or wherever you get our show. And we'll see you next week for another edition.
See you next week.